Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 47 of the Memorial Memo, KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. I hate this time of year because we're squeezing in everything when we can, including this podcast. I know right now UK Volleyball is playing Texas in the SEC Championship. I've got my own little tab open for that one. So, I apologize for the inconvenient timing, but again, we're trying to get this in when we can. Of course, Kentucky plays tomorrow against Maryland and Friday against Morgan State. But, wanted to get this in. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel and not watching, or I guess not listening on podcast, you will see the little thing I did here. All right, this used to be white background. Now it's like a basketball court little thing. I like that. I like. I'm not gonna say I'm like the best graphic designer in the world because I'm not, but I was like, it's a nice little touch that I've added there. But anyway, moving on to the actual episode part of it. So to get things started, Kentucky in the latest AP poll, which came out yesterday, ranked number 16 in the country, their highest rank up of the season. They're up 4 spots from number 20. They started the year at 23, so they've already risen 7 spots this year. Kentucky is 7th in the SEC in those rankings, which is crazy to me because you're number 16 in the country and you're still like midway in the SEC. Just absolutely nuts. South Carolina, Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Tennessee are ahead of Kentucky there. And then, of course, like I said, Kentucky plays Maryland on Wednesday. Maryland is ranked number 7 in the country. And we're going to get into it later, but it's just so crazy to me that number 16 and number 7 are playing on some dumb app called Flow Sports that no one has ever heard of or seen. No surprise for like most of the AP poll. UConn's number 1. UConn should go undefeated. I don't know if they will. They should probably go undefeated this year. They escaped the game against number 6 Michigan. They should probably go undefeated if we're being honest. But again, the SEC is stacked. The top 25. Louisville fell 2 spots, number 23, after losing to Kentucky. But for the most part, I look across the poll. I don't see anything too crazy. Looking at the teams, Kentucky is finally 1 spot ahead of Vandy. I think that makes sense. Baylor sitting there at 5-1 at number 15. Maybe you could argue Kentucky being in front of them. I know I did my little own personal the Memorial Memo poll, and I had Kentucky sitting there at number 12. I think that's probably a bit more accurate, but we'll find out on Wednesday. And speaking of, kind of deserving of things, Clara Strack was named the SEC Player of the Week today. She was also named the USBWA Player of the Week. I forget what their award is. It's named after a player. I don't remember which one. But Clara Strack, SEC Player of the Week. She has now recorded a double-double in 6 of Kentucky's 7 games, which leads the country. She leads the country in total rebounds with 85, second in the country in total blocks with 22. To get this honor, she had 2 big outings, one against Purdue and, of course, against Louisville. Against Purdue, she had 17 points, 13 rebounds, 5 blocks. If you all remember last episode, I was kind of talking about like, man, I didn't really feel like she played like, out of this world, and she still put up that stat line. And then against Louisville, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals. So again, the reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Year, getting it done, both ends of the floor. Just incredible stuff from Clara Strack. She's been your best player all season. It should stay that way. Again, Clara Strack, SEC Player of the Week, her first time. I think it's her first time ever having that honor. Of course, she had to play alongside the likes of Georgia Amore last year, who racked up a few of those last season. She is averaging 16.9 points, 12.1 rebounds, and 3.1 blocks per game this year. And she's only playing 28 minutes a game. And I say only, like it's a good amount. But it's not like your Georgia Amore situation where she was playing 36 minutes a game. Clara Strack is only playing 28 minutes per game. So maybe during SEC play, when she gets, maybe some more minutes, because right now you're trying to make sure she stays healthy and all that. But maybe, maybe when she's playing closer to 30, 35 minutes a game, maybe those numbers go up even more. Just absolute crazy stuff from Clara Strack. Again, absolutely deserving of those honors. I want to get into Louisville game too because, man, how about it, right? Kentucky goes on the road and beats Louisville 72-62. And, I'd sit there and I kind of thought to myself, like, okay, this is going to be a close game. I think my official prediction was 62-58, Kentucky. And, you know, from the very beginning, for the first for the first half, you really saw this was a back and forth game, right? I think Louisville, they got out to a 10-0. Kentucky got up, you know, I want to say like 10-2 or 12-2. And then Louisville goes on a 10-0 run. And then later in the first half, Louisville goes on a 6-0 run. And then Louisville's up, 27-21. Kentucky goes on their own 6-0 run to tie it at 27. But, where the game was really made was that third quarter when Kentucky goes on a 20-6 run. I thought Kentucky did an absolutely incredible job in that third quarter. Think about Tajiana Roberts for Louisville. I don't know about you all, but I was sitting there like face palming, like, oh my gosh, because she had 19 points in the first half alone. And you're sitting there thinking, is she going to drop 40 on us? And then credit to Kenny. Really a lot of credit to Amelia Hassett, who I believe in the second half was guarding her for most of the time. Guys, she only scored 3 points in that second half. And that's really impressive after scoring 19 in the first half. Kentucky holds her to just 3 in the second half. I think you have to give the coaching staff a lot of credit for making halftime adjustments. And one adjustment that I was really intrigued by and really liked, and I was talking to somebody at the game when it was happening at the time, and I was like, I like this. I think this is going to end up being good for us. Different lineup that I don't know if we'd seen all year. Toni Morgan at point guard, Asia Boone at shooting guard, Lexi Blue at small forward, Jordan Obi at power forward, and Amelia Hassett at center. I'm sitting there watching that, and I go, okay, immediately, I think that is about the best offensive lineup as far as just pure putting the ball in the hoop ability goes that you can have, right? I mean, Tony's your orchestrator of the offense. Asia and Lexi are two shooters you got. Jordan Obi's been great on offense, and Amelia Hassett's been a pretty good shooter for Kentucky this season. It's a smaller lineup. I mean, still a decently sized lineup, but it's smaller, when you're Kentucky. And I thought it was really interesting because we talked about it last episode. We've talked about it so much, where Louisville, they like to press and they like to play a little fast at times. And on defense for Kentucky, like I remember with Taj Roberts, for example, one of the things that Kentucky had such a hard time with her, and it's ironic because Amelia did such a good job on her, was that I think Kentucky's guards are just so much bigger than Louisville's. We saw this really against Morehead State a little bit early in the season, where Kentucky's guards are so big and physical, they're just not quite as quick as some of these other guards. So you switch to this lineup where you have Asia and Lexi Blue in there. Well, there's two quicker, smaller guards. And I think defensively that did wonders. Obviously, you hold Louisville 6 points in that third quarter. But at the same time, I thought the offense ran a lot smoother. I thought, they were able to get out in transition. They were able to kind of push the pace a little bit, control the pace in their own way. And that's where I thought Tiani Key made a really big impact. Tiani had 17 points, 8 of 13 shooting, 8 rebounds, 4 blocks from Tiani Key. There was a little bit in that third quarter where, when it wasn't that lineup that I was talking about, Tiani was in there. And they just played through her in the post, played through her in transition. I thought Tiani Key had, I can't tell you the stat lines for every game this season, but I think that's the best Tiani Key has played all season long, just in that game. And, last season, she had 17 points or so against Louisville. I'm trying to find it. I know I wrote it down. But Tiani, she had a really big game against Louisville last season. Yeah, 17 points in that game. Like, it's so nice to see, she struggled in North Carolina some, and I say that, but injury was a big part of it. And she comes here, and, her run at Kentucky is going to be done after this year. We are so unfortunate. We've only gotten and we'll only get 2 years of Tiani Key, but you sit there and you think about all the good things she did. Well, she finished her career at Kentucky 2-0 against Louisville, and she had some pretty good games in both of those outings. You know what she did against Louisville is something that I hope we can all kind of sit and think about. Like, hey, I don't know if we're gonna call her a cardinal killer or anything like that, but she to her credit, when it feels like when sometimes this season she's been so in and out of games, with her production, she's risen to the occasion in some of these bigger games, which is so nice to see. And that third quarter run again, 20-6. You hold that Louisville team, and I think that's a pretty good Louisville team. I think they're better than what we think they are, and they definitely will be towards the end of the season. But you sit there and you hold that Louisville team to 6 points in the third quarter. And like we knew the defense was special, but you do that, and then you dominate the third quarter the way you did. Guys, that was the best Kentucky basketball's played all year. And like that, I think, is what this team looks like at its best. Now, I'm not saying where, the starting lineup, because it wasn't the starters necessarily in for that third quarter. It was a different lineup. I'm not saying Kenny needs to abandon his starting lineup. That's not what I'm saying. But just the way the players took over, the way the coaching staff really took over in that game, in that third quarter, I thought, okay, that's a glimpse, just a glimpse at what this team can be in March. That's a tiny little look at, we just beat Louisville by 14 points in this 10-minute span in the third quarter. That's special right there. That's what the best teams in the country do to you. I just thought it was really great to watch. And of course, I know after the game, Kenny, Tony, they were all very, very much proud of the fact, like, we won this game for Kentucky. I wrote an article about it. Kenny talked about how this is never just another game. Like, playing Louisville matters. I know Tony Morgan had the quote of, this is our state and we wanted to make a statement. I know some of the players embraced that as well. It's just one of those things where it's so nice to see, like Mark Pope on the men's side, for example. He went to UK, played for UK. He understands that, right? Kenny just came from Virginia Tech. And, besides Josie Gilvin, none of them grew up in that Kentucky-Louisville rivalry. But the way the whole team has embraced it, the way they've all just kind of decided, okay, we're going to be a part of this. Shout out to the marketing team, the video staff, and everyone. They released on the men's side to do the journey, where it's when they get a big win, they do it's like a 5 to 10 minute sort of, what do you call it, video docu-series of the win or whatever, kind of behind the scenes stuff. And I thought it was so awesome in the locker room. Kenny's kind of doing his pregame speech, going over the game plan, whatnot. And he mentions, hey, I think Louisville beat Kentucky 8 straight times. It was 7. But he was like, I think Louisville beat Kentucky 8 straight times. He was like, well, that's not happening no more. That was the old Kentucky. This is the new Kentucky. And it's just, that quote alone, that makes the blue blood in my veins just start pumping, right? That's what you want to hear from your Kentucky basketball coach. I love the energy from my guy, Matt G. We're going undefeated. I don't know if we're going undefeated. There's a lot of tough games ahead, but I'm definitely encouraged after that Louisville game. I'm definitely feeling good after. And again, we're going to talk about it some more, but we're really going to figure out how good Kentucky is when they play Maryland, right? Because I think Maryland, outside of that S-tier group of UConn, South Carolina, UCLA, Texas, and LSU, I think Maryland might be the best team in the country outside of that group. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this team looks like playing against that caliber of a team, again, on a neutral court, right? We got Captain Crash in here talking about how nothing says Happy Thanksgiving like a trip to Puerto Rico, the land of the first Thanksgiving. I didn't realize I don't know if is that true? I don't know. I thought the whole first Thanksgiving thing was like Plymouth Rock or whatever, and like the Pilgrims are in like I don't know Boston or I don't know. But regardless, uh, yeah, nothing says Happy Thanksgiving like going to Puerto Rico. Spend so much time sitting there eating your turkey, eating your 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 mashed potatoes, your stuffing, and then well now you're in sweet Puerto Rico for crying out loud. Matt G again says we've been getting disrespected in the polling so bad. This is a top 10 team, easy, and we're going to prove it when we smoke Maryland. That's the energy that we need. And speaking of Maryland, actually, just kidding. Right before we talk about Maryland, I want to give a quick shout to our friends at Rollback for sponsoring today's podcast. Change the game with Rollback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear. From polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta performance pants, you will look and feel good with Rollback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at rollback.com. Now, speaking of Maryland, Mr. Matt G. Again, like I said, I think this Terps team is, again, just my humble opinion, the best team in the country outside of that, like I think you have your 5 national championship contenders that I was talking about, right? Like sitting here, I think South Carolina or UConn, South Carolina, UCLA, Texas, LSU. Those are the teams that I look at and I'm like, those are the 5 that I feel pretty good about they can win a title this year. I think Maryland is the best team sort of right outside of that group. Shout out to this guy. We got, I don't want to try to pronounce it, Angel Cartagena Rivera, and I apologize if I just butchered that. He says, I'm a fan of the Memorial Memo from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Of course, that's where the Puerto Rico Shootout is. Says, go Cats, ready for the game tomorrow. First of all, thank you so much for tuning in all the way from San Juan. Okay, so now that you're here, first of all, I imagine you all celebrate Thanksgiving down there. And if you do, what do you like? Do you eat the whole turkey and stuffing and cranberry and stuff? Is that universal or is it like different based on where you live? I'm curious because like I don't even like turkey. Okay, and here's the thing. I know people sit here and talk about, well, you eat dry turkey, your family can't cook it. Everyone that I'm around seems to love the turkey, so I don't think it's a turkey problem. I think it's a me problem. So, I'm always like, where's the chicken at? I'm trying to eat some fried chicken for Thanksgiving. Not no fried or baked turkey or whatever. And then we got Donnie Stepp talking about how I think we are very lucky to have the coach that we have because he's already proved he can recruit and also coach. I mean, yeah, of course, right? I mean, you're sitting there with the I believe it's number 5 recruiting class in the country now. Texas got 2 5-stars, so I think they've jumped this a little bit. But it's so nice to see Kenny's come in, and I think to his credit, done a really good job on the recruiting trail where, the program he took over, guys, that program, this Kentucky program, won 24 games in 2 years, right? Like this program won 24 games in 2 years. In his first year here, they won 23. And, I think we talked about it last episode where Kenny has done such a good job of embracing the Kentucky basketball brand where Kyra Elsie, Matthew Mitchell, I think they did it a little bit, but not to the level Kenny's done it. They've really talked, Kenny, Pope, UK in general have all talked about how, well, Kentucky basketball is this one big brand other than this umbrella of Kentucky basketball. And I think they've really shown that where, and Kenny's talked about it, how, okay, they'll go call a recruit, top kid in the country, they pick up on the first ring now because Kentucky's calling, and that's a special name in the Kentucky basketball world. Matt G again, if Tony keeps playing like she has the past couple of games and getting more comfortable, this team is hard to stop, excuse me. They look totally different from what they were a few games ago. Oh, I agree. Like you look at this team from the Morehead State game to the Louisville game we just played, it's almost 2 completely different teams. And I'm like you, I think the thing that makes me so encouraged and so hopeful for what Kentucky can be And Kenny's talked about it where, okay, what we are just in game one is not who we'll be in game 10. And who we are in game 10 in November is not who we'll be in December. And who we are in December is who we won't be in, we won't be that in January, and we won't be that in February, March, and April, and so on, right? Like, this Kentucky team is only going to keep getting better. And I'm like, Tony has gotten so much more comfortable finding her role. Again, she had that streak of 4 games with 9+ assists per game. I mean, that's what you brought her in to do. And, she has been such a good positive part of the offense. And again, it was my hot take before the year. I'm still standing by it, where I think she'll break Georgia Amore's single season assist record that she literally just set. Just really special stuff. But getting on to Maryland again, they are 7-0 this season. Like I said, the number 7 team in the country. Like I said, I think Maryland is pretty much right there among the best in the country. They're coached by Brenda Freeze, who, we talk about Louisville. Jeff Walls is a part of that Brenda Freeze coaching tree. She won the title there back in 2006. Super talented. I mean, great coach, great recruiter, one of the best in the country, definitely a top 10 coach. November 23rd, they beat George Mason 84-62 at home. And, I was kind of doing some digging on Maryland a little bit, trying to find, okay, what is there to know about this team? What's an interesting little nugget, right? Guys, Maryland hasn't played away from home this season. All 7 of Maryland's games have been played in College Park? Is that the place? They've all been played up there. Now, Maryland has to play. The best team Maryland's played all the season is Princeton. And Princeton's a team that, some people have ranked, Princeton's a receiving votes team. But, okay, Kentucky now has to play Kentucky, who I think it's fair to say is a bit better than Princeton, away from College Park at a neutral court down in Puerto Rico, right? It's not like this one's in Memorial or anything, but it's all the way down in Puerto Rico, away from College Park, away from home. That's got to be a bit scary for Maryland. Kentucky, they've played Marshall on the road. They played Buffalo on the road. Louisville on the road now. Kentucky, they've seen, this team's experienced adversity away from home. Maryland hasn't done that yet. So I think that's something for us all to keep an eye on. And then I sat here and look at the key players for Maryland, and their lead player transfer from Duke. I believe she was the ACC tournament most outstanding player for Duke. Of course, they won the ACC tournament last year. Oluchi Okanawa, 15.7 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 2.4 assists per game. Again, she's their best player. That's who Kentucky definitely has to keep an eye on. The most, you have a guard in Addie Mack, 12.2 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists per game. They just got Kayleen Schmickel back as well, 11.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 1.3 assists per game. And then if the name Yarden Garzon sounds a little familiar, that's because I was told, and I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't have put this out if I didn't believe it, but Kentucky reached out about Yarden Garzon. She was in Indiana before she went to Maryland. Of course, now she's there playing for the Terps. 10.1 points, 4.1 rebounds, and 3.3 assists per game. Her time at Maryland, I don't know if she's quite lived up to what they hoped she would be, but Maryland's also a deeper, better team than Indiana. So I think that's something you have to take into account as well. But, I look at this game and, again, neutral court, right? This is going to be really interesting, I think, if you're Kentucky, because, again, I think when you say biggest game of non-conference play, I would still say that's probably Louisville, just because of the rivalry factor and the fact Louisville's still a good team. But Maryland is the best team you'll play all non-conference play. Number 7 in the country. This is going to be a really interesting one. Just kind of talk to some people nationally. I think some people are, kind of leaning on UK right now. I think some people are pretty high on UK. I am high on UK I just don't know if I see Kentucky going undefeated in non-conference play. So, for the first time this season, I'm going to do the unpopular thing here, and hopefully someone uses this as bulletin board material and I look like an idiot. I think Kentucky loses this game. I'm going to go 68-63 Maryland. I think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be super high scoring. Again, I just think Maryland, outside of that top five, is probably the best team in the country or so. And I had the Terps winning 68-63. And I have Claire Strack as my MVP because I do think she'll be the best player on the floor. I do think, I don't know if, they have Sailor Poffenberger, who was at Arkansas, but I don't know if they've got necessarily all the weapons to limit Clara Strack, so I think she can have a big game. But like I said, I just don't know if Kentucky's going to go undefeated in non-conference play. Hopefully they do. If Kentucky wins this game, they should go undefeated in non-conference play. Playing Belmont on the road, scary. They're 3-3, but like their losses are to top 25 teams, and they're all close. Like they gave Oklahoma a scare, Tennessee a scare, Ohio State a scare. And then you have Miami on the road, and of course that's a power conference team. I don't think Miami's great, but again, that's a power conference game on the road. That's something you got to watch out for. But if Kentucky were to beat Maryland, they should finish non-conference play undefeated. And January 1st, I think literally it's January 1st. You start SEC play at LSU, and I think that's a winnable game for Kentucky. So, I think if you lose this game, it's not going to derail your season or anything like that. Now, if you lose by 30, I think you can kind of raise your eyebrows and be like, what's going on here? That's not supposed to happen. But I don't see a world where that happens. I think it's going to be close kind of no matter what. But like I said, I'm going to do the unpopular thing. I got Maryland 68-63. Now, I was talking about how Maryland is the best team. Kentucky will play all non-conference play. Guys, Morgan State might be the absolute worst. It's bad when you look up a team's history and there is literally nothing there. Okay, there is no history to talk about. Okay, Morgan State is already 1-5 on the season. 1-5. November 23rd, they lost 82-56 at George Washington. Kentucky guard from last year, Tana Becker, is actually at George Washington. So the Bears, I believe they go by the Lady Bears on the women's side, lost pretty bad at George Washington. And again, when I was talking about looking this team up and being like, oh, they have no history, guys, they've never made the NCAA tournament. And I don't know how long they've been in the MEAC. That's the conference they're in, but they've never won that tournament either. I think I saw they were like regular season champs back in 22, but they've never won the conference tournament. So they've never made the NCAA tournament. Guys, what I'm saying is Morgan State sucks, and there's no dancing around it. Okay, like I said, they lost to George Washington by nearly 30 points. Okay, George Washington. When you're naming a school after presidents, okay, that's when you know you're not great, and Morgan State lost to that team. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on to their key players, their best players that they got. Gabrielle Johnson, 11.8 points, 2.3 rebounds. She does shoot 41.7% from three, though. So I guess if Kentucky's not careful, she could light you up a little bit. They have another guard in Jalaa Bannerman. She was there last year, 10.8 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 steal per game. This is a very guard-heavy team. They have another one, Selena Gutierrez, 8.2 points, 1.5 rebounds, and she's shooting 52.9% from three. I know they haven't really played anybody this season, but 52.9%, jeez Louise. And then you have another guard, and Majay Hayes, 7.5 points, 3.2 assists, and shooting 40% from three. I point out those players, and they all have, like, the ones that I just mentioned, all are pretty good shooters from deep. That's not the case, like, for the whole team. As a team, Morgan State shoots, let's see, I know I had it just now. Yeah, they shoot 28% from three. So as a team, Morgan State is not great from beyond the arc, but it's just like that select few can really shoot it. My prediction for this one, I had Kentucky losing to Maryland. Not at all the case here. I got Kentucky winning this one 94-36. I think this could be, maybe even should be their biggest win of the year. And I have Asia Boone as my MVP. Why? Because, when Kentucky is up by, 45 points at the end of the third quarter, I don't expect the starters to be out there for super long. And I think Asia Boone's going to get a lot of PT. I think we're going to see her run the point guard a little bit. I think we're going to see her do some things. I think Asia Boone is going to be Kentucky's MVP from this Morgan State game. So we're going to call it an episode there. Again, Kentucky with a massive win over Louisville on the road. It feels good to say that. You got a 2-game winning streak on Louisville now. I think Kenny Brooks has won 5 straight against Louisville and Jeff Walls, so that's always exciting. And then you have 2 massive games ahead. This next one against Maryland, you win that one, you're a top 10 team. You win that game, and you're flirting with, I just said how I think Maryland is the best team outside of that top 5. Well, now you're sitting there going, or is that us? Is that Kentucky as the best team sort of outside that top 5? And then let's say you go undefeated the rest of non-con, and then you beat LSU to start SEC play. And now you're going, oh, shoot. Are we in that top 5? Are we in that top 4? Are we making a Final Four? That's a lot of stuff you can consider, a lot of things to be excited about, but it all starts tomorrow against Maryland. And again, even if you lose that game, I don't think it's the biggest thing in the world. Just don't get blown out, right? I think, you're obviously going down there to win. I'm not saying, you're not. But I think this game tomorrow against Maryland, it's not the end of the world if you lose, but it can have some really big implications and give you a lot of hope and a lot of excitement heading into the rest of non-conference play and the rest of the year. If you can win it, Morgan State's a team you should be able to take care of and get through pretty easily. Talked about before the Louisville game, you go 2-0 against Louisville, and I believe I just accidentally clicked on that comment again. Sure did. If Louisville, you're talking about the Louisville game. If Kentucky goes 2-0 against Louisville and then Maryland, okay, now you're thinking, are we one of the best teams in the country? You can't go 0-2 because you already beat Louisville. So if you go 1-1, okay, all right. But again, if you go 2-0, you definitely have a chance to be one of the best teams in the country. So again, really exciting stuff for sure. We should all get over to, I believe it's the SEC Network. I know I haven't pulled up, but I haven't been able to click on it. For Kentucky, Texas volleyball, super exciting. Hopefully, I have not jinxed anything yet. Surely to God, we're up 1-0 or something like that right now. But again, I'm Phoenix Stevens here on the KSR YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, like I said, if you are still here watching this video, if you've made it this far, 33.5 minutes in, like the video, like, comment, subscribe. We got a lot of comments here while we're live. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful things for us here on the KSR YouTube channel. This has been episode 47 of the Memorial Memo, and we will see you guys next time. Peace out.